Hello, and welcome to Candidates Up Front. This is a public interest program of Berks Community Television and the League of Women Voters of Berks County. I'm Judith Cranis. Our November 4th municipal election is coming up, and voters will be selecting judges, school directors, township officials, borough officials, city officials, and these officials affect a lot of things in our lives. Most importantly, they decide how our tax dollars are spent. That's important to all of us. So if you are eligible to vote and you are not registered, please register by the deadline of October 20th. You can do that at the Berks County Services Center, which is on Court Street in downtown Reading, or you can do it online. Online, please make sure you are using the official site for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Search for PA.gov, that's PA and then that little period, and then gov, and then go to the search bar and put in voting, and that will take you to the website. You can check your voting status, you can register to vote, you can change your party, you can locate your polling place, or you can apply for an absentee or a mail-in ballot. And the deadline to apply for that mail-in ballot is October 28th. Now, let me just note that that doesn't give you a lot of time to receive it and get it back, so I would do it earlier. Everyone who cares how their money is spent needs to participate. And it helps if you've met the candidates. And that's why the League is interviewing candidates, those who wanted to be interviewed, and only in the contested races. For each race, the candidates will get the same basic questions and will have the same amount of time to answer them. So let's begin.
Hello, I'm Nan Dunford, a member of the League of Women Voters of Berks County. Two candidates are competing for a chance to be Magisterial District Judge in District 23-1-06. That includes Muhlenberg Township and Laureldale. The candidates are Democrat Colleen Dugan Schearer and Republican Jason M. Bowen. The Magisterial District Judge handles traffic violations, landlord-tenant matters, and civil actions where the amount claimed is less than $12,000. The judge presides at arraignments, sets bail, issues warrants, and performs duties of a similar nature. The term of this office is 6 years. The 2025 salary is $113,713. Please note that the opinions expressed in this interview are those of the candidate and are not the opinions of the League of Women Voters or of Berks Community Television. This interview is with Colleen Dugan Schearer. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Nan.
So to get started, please tell our viewers why you are seeking this important office.
Well, for me, I think it's a part of the natural progression of my career. I have been in the district attorney's office here in Berks County prosecuting cases for 24 years. I've been a registered voter the entire time. I believe that now I can take all of my experience as an attorney, as a prosecutor, and I can apply that to being a judge in my more local community in Muhlenberg and Laureldale. It's where I raise my family, it's where my children are, and I feel very connected to it.
Thank you. What educational work and life experience would you bring to this position?
Well, I got my undergrad degree from Albright College. After Albright, I went to the Penn State Dickinson School of Law and graduated with a Juris Doctor degree. After that, I took the bar exam. I was a law clerk for the Commonwealth Court, and then I interviewed for the position here as an assistant district attorney in Berks County. I have been there the entire time when my current boss, John Adams, was elected. I soon thereafter became a supervisor, and now I'm one of the supervisors in the office. I still maintain a caseload in a courtroom, and I'm active with trial work. And I'm also currently assigned to the Drug Treatment Court program, where, of course, we work with offenders to try to get them back on their feet and reacclimated to the community. I think that As an attorney, my training is certainly going to help me. It's not necessary, but I think it's definitely a bonus. I have been a public servant my entire career. I have never represented private clients. I come from a family of public servants, and my husband is a local policeman here in Muhlenberg.
So in addition to life experience and educational work, there's no getting around that your personal qualities are important to become an effective district judge. So what are those qualities in you that you're excited to provide to doing this job?
Well, I think it's funny because I think I will draw on my experience as a mother. I think as a mother I've gotten
I get that.
a lot of experience in multitasking and being organized, and I think I can dovetail that very well with my experience in our judicial system. I think I have, working in the courts for 24 years, I'm familiar with all of the processes, I'm familiar with all of the players. I'm familiar with how to use case law, how to use the law itself, whether it be a statute or a rule of criminal procedure, let's say, and then to take that to my task at hand. I would look forward to bringing that to the job. I also think an additional level with me being an attorney is I have ethical obligations. I would have them not only as being a judge, but I would also still have my ethical obligations as an attorney. And basically at the end of the day, you have to follow the law and the rules, but you do have to also be empathetic, and you have to give each person their day in court. I think as a mom, I'm a good listener, and I think that sometimes it's about bringing everyone to the table, fleshing it out, and then moving forward. And hopefully you can do that while being mindful of the rules and also applying each case on a case-by-case basis.
Well, thank you. As a district judge, you would deal with matters of both civil law and criminal law. Although the public might not think much about that distinction, it's an important distinction. Please briefly explain the difference and give us some examples.
Well, as far as an MDJ's job goes regarding criminal law, you are going to be the first person that someone that is charged with a crime, you're going to be the first person that they come in contact with, absent the police officer that would have arrested them or filed a citation. If it turns out to be a criminal charge where it is a misdemeanor or a felony, the person would be arrested by either an arrest warrant or they would be mailed a summons. Then a preliminary arraignment is scheduled. At the preliminary arraignment, that's when the Magisterial District Judge will set bail, and then they will schedule a preliminary hearing. At the preliminary hearing, that is the first time that the defendant, the person that's accused of the crime, gets to hear the evidence against them. That would be presented by the Assistant District Attorney, which has basically been my job for the past 24 years. I've done thousands of preliminary hearings. After that, if the elements of the offenses are met, the case goes to the Court of Common Pleas. If some of the charges were not met, then those charges are dismissed. For the civil side, it's different. It's a different legal standard, and you are seeing different kinds of cases. You're seeing landlord-tenant cases that involve eviction or maybe bringing something into compliance, making repairs from the tenant standpoint. It's also performing marriages in the community. It is arbitrating contract disputes and potentially any lawsuits under $12,000.
Okay. The next question is, two questions are quite related to that, but we're thinking about what is the district judge's very specific role in this system in terms of the criminal matters.
Again, I think that the most important job, well, it's twofold. I think setting bail is very important, and it's very important to the community. And I also think that you are making a determination at the preliminary hearing and giving everyone and providing them their due process. You're not there at the preliminary hearing to be the fact finder per se. You are not there to judge the credibility of the witnesses. The Magisterial District Judge is there to listen, to make sure the elements are made, that the police officer that's charged someone with a crime had the evidence to make those crimes out. And if they don't, unfortunately for that police officer, their charge will be dismissed. And if the charge has been made out, then it will move forward. Of course, it's very important to the people charged with crimes because you're talking about their liberty. When you talk about bail, you talk about whether or not someone will remain in jail pending their criminal proceedings or whether they would be outside in our community on some sort of a bail condition or a non-monetary bail or even a secured bail. So it all has an impact on our community as well as the person that's being charged, and they deserve their day in court, and they deserve to have the law and the rules applied fairly.
So run through for us the civil side of that in terms of the judge's role and the definition of that.
The judge's role in a civil case is different. You hear basically the cases and you use a preponderance of the evidence standard. On the criminal side, you're using a prima facie case when you're at the preliminary hearing. More probably than not, a crime occurred. More probably than not, you're the person that did it. So the preponderance of evidence standard in the civil realm means that you are going to be, and in the civil side, you are going to be the fact finder. So you do have to hear the evidence, and you have to see what's provided by the parties. And then you also have to listen to both sides of the story, and then you have to determine who you believe is telling the truth, who has substantiated their claim, who is entitled to relief. In a landlord-tenant issue, there might be specific rules that govern how much notice someone needs to be provided before you can evict them. You need to make sure for that landlord that they're getting paid, that they basically can sustain their business, but from the tenant standpoint, you need to make sure that the rules were followed to give them a place to find, alternate housing. And I think in that case, you can see very well that both sides of the story have important points, and you have to balance that. I think also in the civil side, I think it might be easier to try to get the parties for there to be a meeting of the minds, to try to maybe arbitrate back and forth so that it can end amicably, so that everyone feels heard and feels valued, and at the end of the day, they're satisfied.
District justices set bail. What criteria will you use to decide whether bail is needed, and what criteria will you use to determine how high the bail should be?
Well, in Pennsylvania, everyone's entitled to bail unless they're charged with a homicide or there are no bail conditions that would keep the community safe. No reasonable conditions. So with that in mind, there are rules that govern the setting and the administration of bail. Rule of Criminal Procedure 523 would set forth the release criteria, and there's specifically 10. And there's an additional one if the case involves domestic violence, where the court must consider whether or not the victim in that case will be safe from the defendant if there are security issues. Some of the other criteria that you consider of the 10 would be, are they a flight risk? Have they fled in the past? The nature of their charges. Do they have a substance abuse issue? Is there a mental health issue? Have they been a resident for a long time in the community? Do they have a family support system? Do they have a place to live? Things like that, and they all factor in. Then you turn to Rule 524 of the Rules of Criminal Procedure, and that sets forth the 5 variations of bail, where you can either release someone ROR on their own recognizance, where they're going to make a promise, a written promise to show up, whether you're going to give them nominal bail, which would be $1 to secure their appearance. Sometimes we do that in cases where they might have something else holding them. But if that resolves, we want them to be able to get out of jail, so they would just pay a nominal amount. There could be an unsecured bail amount set where you have to do certain things, maintain maybe treatment issues or testing, maintain your no contact provision, and then you could be released on $1 amount, but it wouldn't be secured. Or there's a secured bail where you actually have to post with a surety and you have to put up money for that. I think then that depending what the person is charged with determines where you're at. If you're a retail theft and it's a minor crime, you would probably set low bail or unsecured bail. However, if it's a really serious aggravated assault crime and the person does pose a risk to the community, you would set a high secured amount so that someone would have to put down a deposit for the release of that person.
Are there community problems, so kind of stepping outside of the district justice very specific case-by-case basis, but are there community problems that through your work you can help alleviate, codes, whatever, what are you thinking there?
I think when you're the judge, you have to remain impartial. I don't think you can really have an agenda per se regarding certain issues or try to be a savior or a champion of a certain thing, but I think that you can provide everyone access to resources and explanations of where to go and places to turn and to know what's available for you in Berks County. I think specifically for a magisterial district judge, you can provide people, you can't provide legal advice, but you can turn them towards the Bar Association, towards the Public Defender's Office. You can encourage them to find legal representation. You can encourage them to avail themselves of other programs like our marijuana diversion program, where you can take counseling, and then as long as you do the counseling, your small amount of marijuana charge becomes dismissed. That's important because that person now won't have that criminal record. There's also a summary ARD program, which is for first-time offenders. And then, of course, you can also tell people about the treatment courts that the county offers. So I think it's really being accessible to the public, showing up, being helpful, being friendly, and providing those resources, whether it's brochures or literature, on where people can go.
What are your thoughts on building trust in Pennsylvania's courts?
I think that goes back to how you just present yourself. I think that's the best thing that you can do. I think that I will be fair, I will be ethical. Of course, I'm duty-bound to be ethical as a judge, but also as an attorney, a licensed attorney. I have to be ethical. I think that my reputation speaks for itself. I've been endorsed by District Attorney John Adams, who's the Chief Law Enforcement Officer in Pennsylvania. I've been endorsed by the Pennsylvania State Police. These people in law enforcement are very familiar with my code of ethics and my reputation, and they found that I'm the best person for the job.
If elected, you'll be serving in the area around Muhlenberg and Laureldale. Does this area have a particular meaning to you?
Yes, it's where I've lived since I married my husband in 2003. He is born and raised in Muhlenberg, and his parents still live in his childhood home in Hyde Park. This is also where I've been raising my two children. I have two girls. They went their entire time, preschool through graduation, at Holy Guardian Angels, which is also our parish, which is located in Muhlenberg Township. And that is where we continue to live, and we've come up through MTAA sports, and we've basically been productive members of our community, and that's where the people I love live, and that's where I want to serve.
Are you involved in any community or volunteer work?
I am. My husband and I are members of the Muhlenberg Lions Club. We have always been involved with animal charities. It began with our greyhounds that we adopted from First State Greyhound Rescue. We also, once we had our two greyhounds, we made them available through the University of Pennsylvania. They were blood donors so that they could donate. We would take them to a vet here in Berks County, and they'd make a blood donation. And the blood donations could save the lives of other dogs. After our greyhounds passed, we had our first kitten, and that was through a rescue. And then we began to foster kittens. People in the neighborhood, in my community, have come to me. I've assisted with TNR, which is trap, neuter, release. And then I've also been taking in litters of kittens, and at my own expense, I make sure to vet them and have them fixed, and then I find them homes after I socialize them in my house.
If your judge listens to conflicting evidence, he or she has to make a decision about what really happened, and what are the factors you will consider in making that decision after listening to evidence?
Well, the interesting thing that people might not realize is that when it comes to criminal cases, when you're at a preliminary hearing, the magisterial district judge is not to be the arbiter of credibility. The burden is on the Commonwealth to establish the elements of the crimes. If the elements of the crimes are made out, then the court is duty-bound to take those charges to the next level of court, which is the Court of Common Pleas. So at a preliminary hearing, you're not really going to hear much of the defense side. You're not going to hear them really make a defense per se, because they're going to save that for trial, where the burden is much higher. Then it's beyond a reasonable doubt. And then it will be the Court of Common Pleas judge or the members of the jury, if they elect to have a jury trial, that will become their fact finder and decide that case. In a civil case, however, I will have to make a determination, and I will be the fact finder, and that is where I think I will use my legal experience as an attorney and as a trial attorney for 24 years to see what evidence is presented. Is that evidence credible? The testimony of the witnesses, you look at their demeanor, how they present themselves, and eventually there will be two sides to every story, but then you will also use your common sense and your life experience and the law and the rules and come up with who you think is telling the truth, and then you will make a finding.
Difficult job.
Right.
To wrap up, would you like to make a closing statement and pull it together as far as why you're running and why people should vote for you, why you're the best candidate?
I think I'm the best candidate due to my reputation in the community as a good prosecutor, as an honest prosecutor. I've worked very well with all of the attorneys that are members of the Berks County Bar and other attorneys as well. And I think that, again, I point to the endorsement of law enforcement, of me, of my career, of my reputation, and I think that stands for something. I also believe that my education and my experience will help me be a better determiner of the facts, of the law. I know all of the programming that's available through the courts. I know all of the ways and the partners that we have in the community to help our residents. And I also, as a mom, recognize that everyone has had a bad day. And I recognize that a lot of people need drug treatment. They need mental health treatment. They need a break, so to speak, but they can't find how to get that break. And I think you have to treat everybody equally, and you have to treat everybody with dignity and respect, and give them their day in court. Very often, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Very often on their worst day, you have to provide, a steady hand and balance.
Yeah, well said. Thank you, Colleen Dugan Schearer, for sharing your views with us. Please, voters and viewers, remember that there's another candidate for Magisterial District Judge, District 23-0106, Jason M. Bowen, and you may vote for one. You will find candidates' upfront interviews on BCTV and its website and YouTube page. For more information on more candidates, go to the League's online voters guide, vote411.org. For more information on election procedures, contact Berks County Election Services, elections at BerksPA.gov, 610-478-6490, and thank you for watching Candidates Up Front.